my parents divorced when I was in college, and that was super out of nowhere and really painful. And so I think I had a lot of fear of just wanting to make sure when I got married that it was the right relationship. And
yeah, because they'd been married for like 25 years or something. So you'd think like, what could go wrong at that point?
Right.
I think a lot of what had stunted my desire to be in a long-term relationship was the idea of like, is it going to end up like my parents? The thought of going through that for myself was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to start a family and put our kids through something like that. Just the what if was always there. And the what if could easily overshadow what God's actually doing sometimes. And I think that's something that even in our own experiences has helped us to understand each other in that way, which is kind of this beautiful thing God does with the brokenness of our parents.
Both of us come from parents who have been divorced or married multiple times. My dad was married twice. The second time was to my mom, and my mom is bipolar. And so growing up in the 7th grade, my mom was actually taken out of my home for her safety and my safety. And, for me, I was still really wrestling with that, I think, when we started dating and coming to grips with my relationship with my mom and also just like my relationship with God in that. When I was really younger, I kind of blamed myself before I knew God. And then I realized like, that's not true. It wasn't my fault. My mom wasn't bipolar until she was pregnant with me. And so I brought a lot of that guilt into my teenage years, and I was still kind of wrestling with that when we started dating. And then for me, going into marriage too, Dave's dad in particular's relationships have been quite dysfunctional. And so I really struggled with that in terms of Dave, of like being worried and fearful that he would bring that dysfunction into our relationship. And that was my biggest fear going into our marriage. And God really, he, helped me see clearly that was like, no, Dave is not, he wouldn't do that to you. Like, he's not that person.
Not really having people in my immediate circle who I could point to as a good example of a healthy marriage was really tough. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to kind of imagine what it could be like, and then always longing to be, if you're watching this and have gone through divorce, with your parents have gone through divorce, you long to be with your friends whose families seem normal to you and have a healthy family, spending time with their families and wanting to be in that environment, just because you almost want to graft yourself into what seems normal.
Yeah. I think it's easy in divorce to feel like you're the product of what happened with your parents, but you learn so much of those behaviors, good and bad, and that's something we're kind of working through in premarital. Is like there's really good things you want to emulate from your parents, and there's really hard things, and I think not till you're in that like serious relationship where it does. It's like we're a team. There's no backup plan for us. I think it changes things.
I remember at one point I was like, what have we done? We got married so fast. Did I make the right decision? I think some of that was the emotions of it all happening so quick. But that's when I said, should we get a divorce before we go too far? I remember, and Nate came in, held me, and said, we're never going to say that. We're never going to have this conversation again. We are committed to one another. I will never divorce you. You will never divorce me, and we're going to make this work. So what do you need from me? And we talked it through, but that happened in the first year of our marriage, really the first several months. And then I always knew that he gave me that security.
The thing is that we both didn't learn that conflict is actually good.
Right.
We both grew up in families where we didn't see conflict, and that's not healthy.
Right.
It's better to experience conflict and know how to work that out.
Yep.
So
that can be a Achilles heel if we decide not to enter into the conflict and just keep traveling in our lanes.
But you had never heard your parents fight until they were getting divorced.
Correct.
So, and I just never heard my parents fight.
Right. So that's a lot. We didn't know how to fight well, so we're learning.
That's even why we're here right now, I think, is having that, God saying, in my story, saying, be willing to share the hard stuff because God's still good. He's still faithful. And that's the thing that's been, I think, resounding in each of our stories. And as we become one, it's no longer the fear of like, oh, what if this happens? Like, no, if God's in it, like, it's going to be awesome. So.